making the decisions that are shaping how companies impact the world. In each episode, we sit down with the thought leaders who are proving that building successful businesses and also building a better future don't have to be in conflict. Welcome to the Sustainable Leadership Podcast, and our special guest today is Sajith Mohideen, who's Group Head of Sustainability, Policy, and Implementation. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jeff, for the invitation. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, and you are doing that for a very large corporation, and so I appreciate you taking the time to do this. Leadership today isn't just about performance, it's about responsibility, so let's get into it. What would you say was your very first sort of, oh wow, I see a problem kind of moment as far as like environmental concerns?
So, Jeff, when it comes to sustainability, I come from a more of an operational background. I come from a more business sector into sustainability. I've been in the role roughly about 3 years. And what truly amazes me in sustainability, this is as much as it's a boots on the ground job for the people in the operation, at a corporate level, this is super strategic. I mean, sustainability is really core and part and parcel of how business strategy is being formed, executed, and also, how I've seen, that the issue is how much sustainability impact P&L, the profit and loss of businesses around the country, around the globe. I've seen it, very dynamic. You see a regulatory change in the European level or the US level, and you see the share prices of companies going up and down, very much dynamic. So you can never sort of separate the sustainability out of your normal day-to-day business any longer. Right? This is really, I think the future is about sustainable businesses.
I agree. Being honest, you coming from a different background, more on the ops, do you always care about sustainability, or is it something started as like, well, it's good for the brand, and then it evolved, or what was that like?
So when I was in operation, no, I didn't know a lot about sustainability. I mean, this is off my topic, not something I was involved in. But there was an opportunity came to step into the role, and I did a bit of research. And then I thought to myself, hey, let's get into it, diversify my knowledge, my skills, and also see how I can contribute, from an ops background. Because at that time, when I stepped into the role, the team was more on a corporate strategy policy level, and they didn't have people with an operational background experience, because I come into the team to challenge them on a more operational, aspect of sustainability, because you make a policy and you roll out a policy from a corporate, but at the end of the day, the business leaders need to implement them and take on the cost and the consequence of that policy, right? Come to challenge the status quo.
Yeah,
and that's how I really get into it.
It's a good point, because good intentions doesn't mean you're good at execution. You could have all the best intentions in the world, but if the operations, implementation, and execution isn't there, it's not accomplishing as much as it could have.
Yeah, exactly. You can have the best plan on a piece of paper, but then if it's not executed, the plan is of no use to anybody, right? That's the point.
There's the Mike Tyson quote, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Exactly.
What's the most surprising thing that you've learned as far as sustainability inside of a massive, multi-billion-dollar corporation?
There have been quite a number of learnings, Jeff, along the way. The one thing that really separates me or my learning was how much every corporate functions contribute to sustainability, and vice versa, how much sustainability impact each corporate function. So I take finance, I take marketing, commercial, HR, operational excellence, engineering, projects, CapEx, strategy. Each function, all the corporate function, even legal function, they've all been impacted by sustainability, and vice versa. Sustainability is impacting them. This is quite a transversal topic. You cannot just contain sustainability into one function or one department and then say, oh, you go and do this. Rather, this is actually embedded in business or end to end. For example, you make some acquisition, there's sustainability involved. You make a project decision, capital allocation, then you have sustainability involved. Then you have marketing, it's about greenwashing. There's about, are you telling the right thing to the customer, right? Again, sustainability. Then you think about operational excellence. This is again how you run your plant, what you do. Again, there are emissions, there are choices you make on raw material, the choices you make on how you operate your plant, sustainability involved. Legal, when it comes to compliance, regulatory compliance on different laws, different, countries, again, sustainability. And then you look at, investor relations, investors, they're all asking about ESG ratings and all sorts of things, sustainability related bonds. Again, it's involved. So it literally is everywhere. That's what surprised me the most, just how much interlinked the sustainability in business.
It's really interesting because it does, to an outsider, come across as just like, oh, how you're helping the environment, as like, that's nice that they're doing that too, but you don't realize how connected it is to all these other aspects. Operational excellence and sustainability is something that you don't hear as much. What would you say if you had to say that's a big part of it that's important? What would be another one? Like you mentioned the PR element of it.
I mean, you can say HR and sustainability. So when we talk about sustainability, I think it's always thinking, people always think about environment.
Mm-hmm.
People always think about pollution, emissions, environment. But sustainability is much bigger. Sustainability is, I would say, environmental, social, and governance related issues. So you have a lot of social issues, around diversity, about how your workers are treated, because if you don't have a sustainable business, if you don't have a good talent pipeline, you need to have people who are happy and you need to work for the company. So that means you need to pay them well, you need to treat them well, you need to promote them.
Is the working environment toxic, right?
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
So this is where I think people just lose a little bit of the aspect when you talk about sustainability. They always look at the hardcore, let's say the emission, the CO2, the pollution,
Right.
That kind of thing. But, people often don't understand a lot of things around reputational risk, right? For example, you have a human rights violation in a country, where you are, bringing a raw material from. It's a huge impact on the share price of any company, basically. The news comes out tomorrow saying, a company sources raw material from one of the developing countries with a lot of human rights violations and X, Y, Z, then you'll have an issue. You'll have a share price impacted. But this is, again, sustainability, but related to people.
Is there a certain myth about sustainability that you'd like to debunk?
This is a very good question, actually. I never really thought this angle through. But for me, when I talk to people about sustainability, oftentimes I find it, people almost always talk about carbon accounting. But people have to realize that sustainability is much broader. Of course, there's an environmental aspect, but then there is a big chunk of social aspect. And the third part is the governance aspect. How much of the company processes, procedures, the workflows have been embedded on a governance structure, who approves what, who's accountable, how the decisions are being made, how much, money being paid, what the monies are being paid for. Is it ethical? Does it conform to various different regulations, legislations, UN guidance, OECD guidance, that kind of thing. These are all governance related, So again, this is a completely different topic when it comes to carbon account. You're involved with more lawyers, you're involved with more compliance related stuff. The myth is that sustainability is not just environment. It's actually environment, social and governance. And this is quite transversal, and that, it is quite a complex topic. It's not quite straightforward either.
You're thinking about all these different things that you've addressed really well, and also thinking about how it all works with the profitability of the organization. What's the hardest trade-off you've had to make between profits and, the planet, the work environment, and all that sort of thing?
So when it comes to let's say talk about environmental thing, right? So to make sustainability work, any company need to employ capital. right? Company need to spend money to gain efficiency, to achieve certain targets they set on purely, now we're talking about carbon accounting, right? Reducing carbon emissions. So that is one trade-off, right? So then again, in here, a company would typically focus on, they're going to spend X number of, capital allocation on sustainability-related projects, but then they will have to then up their game in terms of their product, because their product will be more sustainable, will have a lower carbon footprint, so they can actually increase the price, the margins, and then profit from that, right? So that's one aspect, that's just purely on the environmental aspect. Then you come to the social aspect here. Then we're talking about, your workforce, your employees, your contractors, the workers in the value chain, right, throughout up and downstream of the company. So in here, you talk about human rights. You talk about how responsible you are as a business owner, right? How you treat your workforce. Do you pay them? Do you benchmark your wages? The gender equality in the organization, male versus female, right? The gender equality, the pay gap on the gender, right? So there's a company benchmark, how you pay your female versus male. Is there a significant gap statistically, right? And how you address that. Also, then you come to the talent, the training, the talent attraction, because companies are just companies, the people make the company. Right? So you want a good pipeline of talents that come through, early careers, middle managers, senior managers, and you want people to come organically through organization. Do you attract enough talent? The talent retention rate and how you retain them. And these are all numbers, by the way. These are all numbers that published. These are all numbers that disclosed publicly. And these changes company to company, depending on the company you work for, depending on the season. Some company works on a seasonality, so you will see employee turnover is super high because it's a seasonal business. People come and work for 6 months and go off another 6 months or whatever, right? So again, within the given context, you can see the moment. Right? So this is all come to social. So again, become social reputation. The last bucket is governance. So this is about compliance. Are you compliant to where your company is operating geographically, the local law, national law, international law, and how your company is paying taxes, for example, right? Being a good citizens company, looking after the systems and being fair and ethical in how you source and how you treat your people in the value chain, that kind of thing, right? So all of these, the environmental section will have an impact on the product, on the P&L, as well as the social and governance as well, because they all related somehow to the ESG ratings, like how you rate a company. There are different kind of ESG rating agencies, like, for example, CDP, Sustainalytics, MSCI, ISS, Carbon 100 Plus. So these are all different kind of rating agencies. They are actually crunching these numbers to say how sustainable your company is. And these have an impact. These have an impact to the investors, because the investors look at these numbers and they're looking at, okay, this company is doing financially well, but then, in 5 years' time, there may be a problem because there is a choking line on talent, maybe, maybe they will struggle. You never know, right? So that kind of thing. They're looking at reputational risk, right? So what is come up in the newspaper, what comes up in the media now, right? In controversies, violations, and what could potentially degrade the brand value of the company. With people, with customers, how you are perceived in your market, within amongst your peer group, because everything is a benchmark in life, if you know what I mean. There's always someone benchmarking your company against another company. So these ratings play a huge part, Jeff, in defining how well your company is doing, basically. Right. So hence that impact the profitability of the company. And also, a lot of these things are very much interlinked. If you look at Moody's ratings and things of companies, they're all very much interlinked.
Yeah. Wow. Well said, man. What's one bold step, in your opinion, that every CEO that's watching this should take this year?
So again, I think the world, as we know, Jeff, is going through some level of transformation. There is some level
That's
of
one way to put
chaos.
it. Yeah.
There is some level of chaos. There is some level of deregulations. European Union on omnibus. There are some law regulations coming from the US. The bold decision is that sustainability is here to stay, regardless of what the current economical political
Sure.
situation is. On a
Yeah.
long term, think about, when we talk about business, we talk about short, medium, long term, right? So on a long term, sustainability is here to stay, and invest now for the future. Invest today for the future, because oftentimes, Jim, what you find in sustainability is that there is a lag between when you invest your capital to when you see the benefit.
Yeah.
So there's a time if you commit money today, you might see the benefit in 3, 4 years, 5 years time.
You're bringing up the point of investing for the future. And so I was thinking a good to finish on might be if you could finish this sentence: the companies that will win in the future are the ones that what?
Put sustainability at the core of the business today, and commit to it. Yes, exactly.
Perfect.